I was in ninth grade when Man of Steel came out 10 years ago. At the time, I was very excited to see a new Superman movie, as we hadn't had one since Superman Returns, and this was the first to truly divorce itself from the Christopher Reeve films that came out before I was born. It felt like a new start, and I was really captivated by both the performances of Henry Cavill as Superman and Michael Shannon as General Zod, and I maintain the latter played one of the best written and acted comic book film villains ever. And that movie had and still has its critics, people who are upset that Superman killed Zod even though he did the exact same thing in Superman 2. But from what I've seen, most of the criticisms were geared toward the writing and not the performance. I even know people who dislike the Snyder films and yet speak highly of Cavill's likeness to Superman, wishing he was given a script that they believed was better. Now, when it was announced over a year ago that Michael Shannon would be reprising his role as Zod in The Flash, I jumped out of my seat in excitement, but there was a certain wonder on my part about the status of Cavill's Superman. After all, at this point, he hadn't played the character in years, not counting the Snyder Cut, and we really weren't hearing anything about another Superman film. Then Black Adam comes out, and like a lot of people, I don't see it in theaters, but that post-credit scene got around, and I was elated to discover Cavill's cameo. The actor then announced he was back as Superman, and it really seemed like things were going in a direction that I favored. But within weeks of that announcement, James Gunn revealed his intention to create a new Superman film titled Superman Legacy with a younger version of the character who Cavill would not be playing. To say I went into a state of shock would be an understatement, and I think my reaction would have been more subdued had it not been for him being brought back just as recently as the last DCEU film before Gunn's announcement. That almost made the latter's decision to not try retaining Cavill seem like the equivalent of dangling a carrot in my face and then pulling it away when I go for a bite. It's such a rare instance of me having a mood whiplash where, after becoming pessimistic at the chances of seeing Cavill play the character again, as he hadn't played Superman in 5 years, then the Black Adam cameo really got me excited at the potential of his return, just for that cameo to amount to nothing when Gunn decided to make his own Superman movie. As time has passed, I just kept thinking about Man of Steel 2, and I've always believed sequels should build off of whatever was established by the previous movie. And the idea of Superman having a character arc where he learns from his mistakes and actively looks for ways to protect people and also avoid the heavy collateral damage of his fight with Zod as a concept is very interesting to me. There was a report that Brainiac was considered, and a villain as varied as that not only ties well into everything set up in Man of Steel, as he can be revealed to have played some role in Krypton's destruction, but you can also tell this story of Superman learning more about his past while trying to solidify himself as the protector of Earth's future. One of the few things I disliked about the Reeve films was the lack of villains from the comics in the third and fourth film, with the exception of Luthor returning for the fourth. Man of Steel 3 could feature Parasite or Livewire, and maybe a fourth film could finally see Bizarro appear in live action. What I find most frustrating about these possible sequels is that they are still entirely doable. Many people mention Cavill eventually being aged out of the role, but you can easily have him film Man of Steel 2 this year, and if it succeeds, have him film a third and fourth back-to-back the year after that. Movies are oftentimes shot years before release, so if they wanted to, we could have seen Cavill last a lot longer than many are claiming. By the time Superman Legacy comes out, it will mark the third time in a row that we have had a solo Superman film where the character and supporting cast were recast with the intent of starting a new franchise. We already know that Gunn's film is supposed to introduce a new version of Superman that will appear in future movies. This was also meant to be the case with Routh and Cavill's versions. While we did get this to an extent with Cavill, it certainly wasn't to a degree that either the actor or many of his fans wanted. And really, that's a major issue I have with non-MCU superhero franchises. It's hard for me to get invested in a story that's just going to restart every couple of years when a movie doesn't do as well as the studio hoped. I'm tired of restarting and seeing another origin story or attempting to get used to a new cast of actors who are just going to be replaced after 1 to 3 movies anyway. Who's to say that Superman Legacy comes out, doesn't do as well as the studio wants either critically or financially, and they decide to not do a sequel and reboot again? It would just be history repeating itself again. I think Gunn should have not only kept Cavill, but also his cast and whatever remnants of the Man of Steel script that he could find and just make that movie. See how well it does, and then weigh keeping him or not. If they wanted another Superman in the event that Man of Steel 2 failed both financially and critically, they could simply slap an Elseworlds label on it and then introduce another version of the character. The great thing about the multiverse in both DC and Marvel is that it allows these studios to have course corrections with completely undoing everything that has come before. In the event it performed well, they could then make Man of Steel 3. I believe a second standalone Cavill film would have done well, but now we'll never know. What we do know is that I'm not excited for the future of DC on film. I'm not a toxic fan. I have not sent a single message to James Gunn to convey my dissatisfaction with his choice. And I'm not about to tell you that I won't see Superman Legacy. For all I know, that movie could be amazing. I like both Guardian of the Galaxy films, and Gunn is someone that I have confidence in the storytelling abilities of, but I don't have faith in DC as a brand because they seem to be incapable of charting a course for their stories across a set of films and actually sticking to it. There was a YouTuber who said that Snyder fans act like they care more about his vision than DC Comics, and my rebuttal to that is oftentimes when people get engrossed in an ongoing story, they want to see the conclusion, and when that ending is seemingly canceled forever, they have a right to be upset over that. At this point, maybe I'll consider writing my own version of Man of Steel 2, if for anything just to prove that a good idea existed in the setup from the 2013 film. I'll also go see The Flash because I am excited to see Michael Shannon return as Zod in addition to Michael Keaton playing Batman again for the first time in 30 years. But I don't think I'll ever get over Cavill as Superman. He was an iconic part of that series. He's someone who I think had a lot of potential and stories to tell, and unfortunately he was done in by maclamations completely out of his control. He deserved better.